It's your Friday daily delivery. I am Michael Rand. Glad to be back for another day. Final show of the week, and a really good one at that. I'm excited about this one. I'm excited about all of them, but particularly today because Chip Scoggins joins me here in just a little while to talk about his excellent, outstanding profile of Chloe Johnson, the Duluth basketball star. So much more to that story. Maybe you've read it already, went online, StarTribune.com on Thursday, still, of course, available on StarTribune.com right now, and will be in your Sunday newspaper. A long read. Nobody does those better, at least at our paper, and I would argue few do it better than Chip nationally, if anyone. Those long reads that he's done over the years for the Star Tribune, this is another one that he absolutely knocked out of the park. So we will talk more about that story and a little bit more at the end of the segment about another story that he has coming out on Sunday. Chip, never one to be not busy. I probably could have phrased that better, but you know what I mean. Chip likes to keep going, keep moving, and the production, what he does, the quality, just outstanding. And this was another example of that. So hope you enjoy that conversation in just a little bit. End of the show, I want to talk about Kirk Cousins. If you've been trying to connect the dots on what might happen with Kirk Cousins in free agency this offseason, Vikings quarterback, of course, dots leading towards Atlanta got more interesting yesterday with a couple of things, some reporting on Bill Belichick, a video that was posted yesterday, a conversation between Kirk Cousins and a reporter for CBS Sports. So we'll get into that in a little bit at the end of the show as well. Not so much here's a smoking gun. This is definitely where Kirk Cousins is going to wind up, but interesting development in, hey, if he doesn't stay in Minnesota, if things don't look like they're going down that path, maybe this is more fodder for the Atlanta idea. First, though, what did I miss?
But they are who we thought they were.
That, of course, is a clip from the late Dennis Green, former Vikings coach. This is when he was coaching in Arizona. You'll recall they blew a lead, lost to the Bears, and he had a fiery post-game speech that, of course, included that key phrase. This I will apply to Minnesota teams on Thursday night. Timberwolves, Wild, Gophers men's basketball, all in action. Timberwolves have been good all year. Better than good. They've been great all year. They are now 30-11 after beating Memphis. Weird game last night. A 9 o'clock local tip-off, a TNT game. Second game of a back-to-back for the Wolves. Looked a little sleepwalky through the first half, but again, this is a team good enough to do that a lot of times, at least against inferior opponents, and Memphis qualifies as such this season, especially as constructed right now. No Ja Morant. He missed a lot of early time with that suspension and is now out for the year with that injury. A lot of Memphis's other key players not playing in this game. Wolves, heavy favorites, kind of let Memphis hang around for the first, 2.5, 3 quarters. Memphis actually had a lead going into the fourth, and then the Wolves turned it on. Ant turned it on. Remember when people said Ant, by the way, didn't like basketball? There was like a quote before he got drafted that was blown out of proportion, or right before he started playing that got blown out of proportion. And yeah, I think Ant likes basketball. The dunk he had where he threw it off the backboard to himself was utterly fantastic. He had a monster second half, just pure joy out on the court, everything he does in basketball. I think Ant definitely likes basketball, and I think Wolves fans definitely like and love this team. Like I said, 30-11 at the break, and not at the break, but at the halfway point of this season. That is a pace for 60 wins. That's an easy pace to calculate. You're halfway into the year, and you've got 30 wins. A pace for 60 wins. That is something else for this team. Now, that is kind of, we saw the start they had to this year. They were like 16-4 at one point. You're like, okay. Then they kind of hit a little bit of a lull. They had to play some of these hard teams, but they've kind of come out of that. They are what we thought they were at the start of the year. They are a very good team. I don't know what kind of playoff team they're going to be. I don't know how far this goes, but this is a very good regular season team and a team that should earn a top 4 at least seed in the West, have a chance to win at least one playoff series. We're just putting bare minimum expectations, possibilities out there. Definitely a possibility that they can do more than that, but I'm gonna let them walk a little bit before they run. But they are what we thought they were 2 months ago. This is a good team, a very good team. The Wild loses 7-3 to Tampa Bay, one game after snapping a losing streak, winning 5-0. You're like, okay, maybe the Wild are back. They've been up, down, up, down. Maybe it was going to be another upswing. Thursday was a disaster. We find out Jared Spurgeon, their best defensive player, or at least one of their best defensive players, out for the season. Just an accumulation of injuries. He can't fight through it. He's going to have surgery, be back in time, it sounds like, for the start of next year. This year, though, getting away from them quickly there. I think 8 points out of the last wild card spot now. They've got some promise, right? Like Brock Faber is a Calder candidate. He's up there in the candidates for top rookie. Marco Rossi should get some votes too. Like they've got some young players who are doing some good things, but the puzzle, the complete picture for this team didn't look right at the start of the year, led to the firing of Dean Evison. They bring in John Hines, kind of get that little bounce for a couple weeks, win some games, start playing better. They're healthy. Then injuries hit them. Even now that they're getting healthier again, Kaprizov back, Gustafson back, getting some of these guys back. I know they just lost Spurgeon, Brodin back. Even getting some of these guys back, they don't look like a complete team. They look like some mismatched parts just aren't adding up to the whole. That's what they looked like at the start of the year. That's what they are right now. That's what they looked like in a 7-3 loss. The power play for Tampa Bay gets 3 goals. The Wild's penalty kill remains the worst in the NFL. They are what we thought they were. They are not a great team. They are not a good team. They're not the worst team in the league. They can still beat good teams on certain nights, but this is not, I don't think, a playoff team. Worried about them for the rest of this season. Worried about them next year, too, until they finally get to that 2025-26 season where they're not in cap jail anymore when those Suter Parisi buyouts essentially come off the books. I think there's like a little bit of money left on them, but not the $15 million. It's like $1 million or so. So the cap goes up. Their effective space goes way up. And so you got to wait, though. You got to wait like a year and a half. They are what we thought they were. They are not a great team this year. Gophers men's basketball, they lose at Michigan State. We were all getting kind of excited about this team. They were 3-1 in the Big Ten. They'd won at Michigan, had a good home win against Nebraska earlier this year. Came home after Michigan, beat Maryland. A couple teams that are struggling this year, but name brand programs, right? So they're 3-1. You're like, okay. They've got 3 games coming up before a home game against Wisconsin. They had, tough games at Indiana, home against Iowa, and at Michigan State. And you're like, okay, you look at it, you say, okay, if this team is going to take a step this year, they really probably need to win at least one of those games. You probably circled the home game against Iowa. Iowa's not been great this year. Gophers, I think, were actually favored to win that game, but they lose at Indiana, they lose at Iowa, and they go to Michigan State last night and lose again. So now they're 3-4 in the Big Ten, carrying a 3-game losing streak into that home game against Wisconsin coming up here, I believe, on the 23rd. Trying the efforts there. The talent is better. Couple little injuries here and there, but kind of worried that they are what we thought they were too. Not to say they're as bad as they've been the last couple years, but to say that they are not quite ready to jump into that middle pack of the Big Ten. Not ready to say, hey, if this is 16 teams right now, not ready to say they could be 7th or 8th. Might be more like 12th or 13th still this year. That's an improvement. How much of an improvement is debatable. Where they can finish this year, still up for grabs, but looking at them right now, kind of feeling like, based on what we knew at the start of the year, they are what we thought they were as well.
Grand Casino would like to take a moment and salute the true football fan. The passion, the hope, the anticipation, that incomparable feeling of winning. Grand Casino would also like to take a moment to remind you that you can find all that anticipation, thrill, and winning at Grand Casino. Grand Casino, let your story begin.
It's my privilege, as always, to have Star Tribune columnist Chip Scoggins on the show. Right now, we've talked about many things over the last few years of Daily Delivery, Chip, but I always love to have you on, particularly after you've written one of what's become kind of your signature long features. You had another one, went online Thursday, will be in the Sunday print edition. Chloe Johnson, basketball phenom from Duluth. More than just that, though, overcoming a lot of obstacles, personal life adversity, and just a phenomenal story, Chip. So first off, congratulations and welcome.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, thanks for having me, and thanks for wanting to talk about Chloe. It was a friend had tipped me off to Chloe. I didn't know about her. He had saw a write about her in one of the recruiting websites, and it had mentioned some of the challenges that Chloe faces with her obsessive compulsive disorder and anxiety and a condition I had never heard of called selective mutism. And so I reached out and talked to her mom and parents and met them for lunch and spent last 6-7 months traveling up to Duluth 7 or 8 times just to spend time with Chloe and her family. And I'm happy that we're able to get to share the story now.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of different things we should talk about in relation to the story. Hope everybody who's listening has read it. If you have not, obviously, like I just said, go find it on startribune.com or wait for it in your Sunday print edition. Just what a remarkable combination of basketball skill, but also, like you said, these challenges that she faces and how those two things work together. That's probably the most fascinating thing about this is how, you read stories, you hear stories. I've even done stories about how sports being a way, into a life, into being, into a salvation, things like that. This feels even more, it just feels different though than just like using sports to overcome a tragedy or to distract yourself. This is an integral part of being her best self, it seemes like.
Yeah, without a doubt, because her OCD symptoms are so severe, and she's learned to manage them more now. But when she was at 8, 9, 10 years old, they were debilitating. I mean, they consumed her life, her parents' life, her family's life each day. The basketball court, she told me, is the only place where she feels free. Her mind stops working. She's able to just free herself from all the compulsions, the random thoughts that can paralyze her. When she's on a basketball court, she said that's her safe place. That's where she feels free. Her mind doesn't feel any anxiety. And so she can just immerse herself into basketball. And she's become, for people who haven't read the story, she's one of probably the best 8th grade girls basketball player in the country. And she's playing on an AAU team. The All Iowa Attack is one of the premier AAU teams in the country. And she plays on their top team, the 17U. So she plays with the seniors. The youngest player they've ever had on that team, younger even than Caitlin Clark. So that tells you what kind of prodigy she is. But she has found an escape from her challenges with OCD and anxiety in basketball. And when she gets on the court, that's where she feels free.
Since you talked about the basketball a little bit, let's stay there for a minute and then get back to some of the personal stuff that you got into in the story. Basketball wise, like what? It just sounds like she does everything well, just vision, shooting, just power. Yeah. How do you describe her as a player, even when you've got that whole package?
Yeah, it's interesting. She's 14 years old and she's a point guard, but she's 5'11" and incredibly strong. She does not, when you watch her on a court, you would not say there's an 8th grader. You would say there's a senior, just the way she can overpower people. I always say Paige Beckers is flashy. We all remember Paige and the spectacular plays that she made. Chloe's not like that. Chloe does everything well, but in just a cerebral way. She's a combination of power and grace. She can shoot it really well from 3-point. Here's the thing, Mike. She's 14 years old. Now, she's not facing the best competition up in Duluth.
She's at Duluth Marshall High School, right? That's where she plays.
Duluth Marshall, yeah. Right. But her team does come down to the cities to play bigger teams, better, so they get better competition because sometimes she doesn't get challenged that much up there. But she's a 14-year-old 8th grader, and she ranks among the state leaders in every single statistical category. shooting, scoring, rebounding, steals, blocks, assists. She does it all. I mean, she's just so. And her coach calls her her trainer, Diami Starks. We can talk about the impact that he's had in her life, but he calls her a savant because of the way she sees the game. She studies the game, and I think I think because of how her brain works, sometimes she sees the game differently. She plays the game differently. It's hard to describe, but you watch her and you know you're seeing something brilliant, but it's not flashy brilliant. You just see that she's so much better at a different level than everybody else on the court. And then you stop. I remember watching her and she's just dominating this game. And I'm thinking, she's 14 years old. She's an eighth grader. This is not supposed to be happening, right? So she works hard at it. She spends 4, 5, 6 hours a day on the court working on her skills, working on her game, working on her strength.
And this is because she wants to, because she needs to. You mentioned her trainer. Really, I mean, more than that, family friend, someone who's become a key to all of this, to kind of the evolution of her, not just as a player, but as a young person.
Yeah, his name is Diami Starks. He was a star basketball player at Duluth East High School, played Division I basketball, a couple schools, played overseas professionally. His dad, Will Starks, was a well-known figure in the Duluth basketball scene. He was a coach and trainer, skills trainer. You know, when kids want extra training, they'd go see him. He died in 2015, and Diami came home to help support his mom and younger sister, who was a teenager at the time, and kind of took over what his dad was doing. And Chloe has an older brother named Brooks, who's a junior at Duluth Marshall, who's a Division I prospect, a really good player. So their parents took Brooks to see Diami when he was in 6th grade and brought Chloe along with him, and something magical happened. I mean, it lit a fire. She didn't say a word, but she just did everything intentionally with great effort, great purpose, great focus, more than anything, all the drills that Diami did. And so they just started coming back, and they created this relationship that's more than coach or mentor. As Diami told me, he said, I can crack her code because she's tough to because she doesn't talk a lot. She's very focused, very driven, but they kind of speak the same language in terms of basketball. And those two work so hard. I watched a number of their workouts, just those two in the gym. I watched them one day, Mike, work 50 minutes straight on layups, on just layups over and over, making sure it was perfected. And he has become a irreplaceable presence in her life, to the point where the Johnsons, Heather and Greg, basically welcomed him to the family, and he's over there all the time. And it's not always rosy because he's tough. He gets on her, he pushes her, but as Greg said, Chloe's dad, the love is always there, and it's never, this guy's trying to harm our daughter. That they know what he means to her and what he's trying to accomplish and what she wants from Diami in terms of that coaching. And so it's a fascinating relationship, those two, and how this guy who was just a skills trainer has now become such an integral part of her life.
They have a basketball court at their house too, which is interesting to me.
Yeah, so as she got older, they realized that, because she was on the court all the time, and they were always trying to finding basketball space in Duluth is not easy, hockey place, to the point where Diami would meet her at a racquetball court in the downtown Y because they couldn't get on the gym, and they would work on stuff there. But so they had a house that was down the road from where they are now. They sold that house. They actually got a smaller house, but they built this house with a indoor basketball court attached to it, and it is phenomenal. Like, if you're a basketball player, it's full court, everything you can imagine: shooting machines, ball racks, scoreboard, speakers, workout equipment, a video game, everything you can think of that you'd see at a popular commercial type gym. And that's kind of their laboratory. She's in there all the time, either by herself, with groups. Kids come over in the North Shore. You'll have 5-on-5 games there. Diami's always working out people there. So it's as Greg, her dad, said, when they realized that basketball was such an important thing for her mental health, they sacrificed and did this. And he said, this is what, I want to get his quote straight, but he said, this is where she feels safe and calm, or safe and free. So yeah, that's it's convenient. So she can, as I had her count one time, she's 64 steps from her bedroom, and she's if there's anything going on in her life that's creating tension or anxiety or these thoughts that she's getting stuck on, she can go in that gym and feel free.
Another piece of this puzzle that you wrote about was a story about Jake Sullivan, former really good high school basketball player here, went on to star at Iowa State, right?
Yep. Yeah.
And you reference a story. Now, I'm sure in the middle of this story that you just wrote, it's not convenient or proper to say, you wrote that story.
Yeah.
Did you not? You wrote the Jake Sullivan story that has impacted her life. How did that feel to know about that and make that connection?
Yeah, it was interesting. So when I had the first conversation with Heather Johnson, after I had learned about Chloe, we were just talking on the phone, and she was giving me some background. And she said, and then your paper did this story back in 2019 on this basketball player, Jake Sullivan, that really had a massive impact on our life, on our whole family. And I said, I wrote that story. And she kind of gasped, and she's like, she just couldn't believe it. And I said, she said, that story saved Chloe's life. And I said, well, I appreciate you saying that. I'm glad. She's like, no, that story saved her life. And they were at the lowest that they had ever been. Chloe was 10. This was 2019, February. Weren't really, her OCD symptoms were so debilitating and so consuming every day that the parents had exhausted all kinds of different parenting tricks, tactics, tried different things to try to help her through this and navigate it, but they were just exhausted. They weren't sure really how to proceed. And Heather's sister, Steph, who's an aunt up there, lives there, she said, called her one Sunday morning and said, you're not going to believe this. You got to read this story in Star Tribune about Jake Sullivan. It's a long form profile that I had done on Jake, and he had opened up about his OCD that he dealt with privately and shared, a lot of the things that he went through. And it was just it hit Heather like a lightning bolt. She said, this is Chloe. These are the things that Chloe. So her sister said, you should reach out to Jake, try to get in touch with him. So she called, left a message at his employer. Jake called him back that night. They had an hour conversation. He walked him through it. He said, this is what you have to do to manage this. It's going to require tough parenting. He gave him tricks. I don't want to say tricks. That's not the right
tips,
tactics,
shortcuts. Yeah.
Tips, suggestions. Yeah. And one of them was when Chloe gets stuck on a thought that she just can't get off of, Jake said, picture a trash can in your mind, take that thought and throw it in the trash can. And that helped her. She uses it today. If she gets stuck on something or she's feeling anxious, she'll say that's something I need to throw in a trash can. And so, and Jake, they because of the basketball circles, and Jake's son JJ is a really good player at Eden Prairie. They run into Jake from time to time at travel, and so they become family friends. And they steadfastly believe, and I think that's a big part of why they're sharing their story, because that story changed their lives. They said it saved Chloe's life, and now they're hoping Chloe's story does the same for someone else. And we're already starting to see it. I've been contacted a number of times this morning from people that want to write Chloe's letters that have kids or people they've gone through it. And so, it was, it's always tricky when you're writing a story to interject something that you've done. But in talking to Chris Carr, our editor, is like, I don't know how you could write this story and not, because it was such a defining moment in their life. And because of that, they saw hope, they found light, they found a way forward. And it really, the steps that he took changed how they started to manage her OCD symptoms. And so it was such a big part of her story that, you could not include it. Of
course. And it's fascinating to me. And it's got to be just like double, triple, however gratifying for you. Like, it's probably humbling. You're probably like, I did that. Like,
Well, I didn't do it. Jake did it, Of course,
yes.
I get a little choked up here. yeah, you hope you make an impact when you're doing journalism. But I've talked to Jake a number of times. I interviewed him for the story, and I said, when we sat down, and Jake was gung ho about, he was all for, sharing his story. And I said, this is, when you think back when you hear a parent that of a kid that you didn't know say, you sharing your story saved their daughter's life, there's nothing more impactful or rewarding, I would think, from your perspective. And yeah, he's grateful that he's been able to come into her life and help her.
Outside of basketball, what is daily life like for Chloe now at age 14, and kind of where does this story go from here, do you imagine?
Yeah, there's she has challenges. She has hard days. There's it's, as I said, OCD is not a valve that gets shut off. Or her anxiety. It's something that she has to deal with on a daily basis. Now she's found ways to manage it a lot better than as she's gotten older. And so that's helpful, but the challenges are always there. And so the good thing for her is she has a support network around her. Her school, she finishes 2 hours earlier in the day than other students because fatigue can really exacerbate OCD symptoms. So she doesn't, the school really helps. She's allowed to take her cell phone with her in class because of the anxiety of if she had to reach her parents and not having a phone, that could create problems. So the school has really done a great job of supporting her and what she needs. She has this great support network and family, basketball players, but her life is very structured. It's school, basketball, more basketball, more basketball. That's kind of how she approaches it. She's a unique kid because she is a teenager, and anybody who has teenagers or even young kids, she does not like being on her phone. She thinks the phone's a waste of time. She averages 18 minutes of screen time a day.
Yeah, my kids too. My kids too. It's 18 minutes.
That's right. For a 14-year-old, that's unbelievable. She thinks it's a waste of time. She thinks she's on social media for recruiting things, but she's not big into that. It's basketball driven. She has different things she likes. She likes to play Yahtzee with her dad at night. She likes to hang out with her cousin, who's her best friend. So she has, interest, but a lot of it is focused on basketball and very just driven and focused to be great in that arena.
Kind of sounds like she can play wherever she wants in college. She's in 8th grade, so it's kind of weird to say that. It's 5 years from now, but how good she is, it's,
Yeah, she has 8. She will be. She has 8 scholarship offers already. Gophers, Wisconsin, Maryland, all Division I's, and more would offer. But I think there are schools that say, okay, she's in 8th grade. We have time to recruit her. We don't have to jump in right now. So it's going to be fascinating. As we talked about watching her, and I watched her dominate these games, and I'm thinking, what is this going to look like when she's a junior and senior? And so that's going to be fascinating to see where this goes. And you never know with development, but the way she works and her skill set and her size, she is so strong. And 5'11" and a point guard and all that. She's going to just continue to get better. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out over the next, 4.5 years. And she'll be able to go wherever she wants. She'll be the, top 5 player in the country, and every school will offer. So, and then that's where I think it's good that she has such a tight knit support network around her to help her through. Because as you know, Mike, you've covered it. Recruiting's hard for top level guys. The pressures of schools wanting you, and you're hearing it constantly. Everything sounds great. Come here, come there. And so, and then you add on top of it some of the challenges she faces in dealing with her OCD and anxiety. So the good news is she has such a loving and tight support system around her that they will help her through this, no doubt.
Yeah. That's amazing. What a tremendous story. Anything more to add before I mention another story that's coming out Sunday?
No, I hope people read it, and I hope people understand and appreciate just the courage it takes, because I kept telling myself this throughout the process, that don't forget this is a 14-year-old girl.
Yeah.
And as mature as she is, and both personality-wise, but also basketball-wise, when you see her, you're like, oh my gosh, she's an 18-year-old, she plays like a college player. She's a 14-year-old kid. And for her to trust me and her family to trust me to tell her story, I think is remarkable and inspiring, and I'll never take that for granted. And I'm just so appreciative. And so I hope people keep that in mind when you read what she's sharing and what she hopes comes out of it. I had a list of questions for her, that one of our final visits, and she loves to write, probably more than talk to, a reporter, but I had, a number of interviews with her, but I had some follow-up questions, and Chloe wanted to write them down. She loves to write. She has journals. And so the next day they sent me pages and pages of notes that Chloe had written me. And, one of them was that she thinks it's good to share the challenges and the struggles that you go through, so you're not suffering in silence, and it may help someone else. And I think she had Jake in mind and what he did for her. And so I hope her story inspires somebody if they're feeling alone or going through challenges similar to what she is, that they're not alone, and that there's someone that, is talking about it and is a resource there. Because I think the family appreciates all the messages they're hearing today from people that are kind of going through similar things.
It's fantastic. That's as good as it can get. Chip, you're taking our publisher's initiative to cover the greater state of Minnesota to personal heart. You will not only have one, but two bylines in Sunday's paper, just kind of the way the timing works out. You also have a big piece on Coy Parrish, the big recruit for the Gophers, who was an MVP of the All-Star game a couple weeks ago, is, by all accounts, one of the more exciting recruits to come here in a while. What did you learn about him, and what should we learn in that story?
Yeah, so I went up there twice. I went and spent some time with Coy and his parents at their house and at school.
It's in Esco?
Esco, yeah. Yep. So it's not far from Hermantown, which is where Chloe lives, probably, 5 miles maybe. Yeah. But and then I went back the next night to watch Esco with Coy take on Cherry with Isaac Osama, who's the Gopher recruit. And it was it was an unbelievable atmosphere. They actually had to turn some people away because it was so sold out. We were standing along the baseline. Cherry won. But I will say this, everything I've heard about Coy's athleticism is that, and then some. He is freakishly athletic. The way he springs off the floor, runs, it's unique to say the least. And he is super confident kid, super competitive kid. He's coming to Minnesota with an agenda to play right away, play great, make the Gophers a better program. I'd heard this story. PJ Fleck mentioned it during the signing day thing, and I doubled back with PJ on text because I want to make sure it's true. But PJ went up there, watched him play, and Coy had already returned a couple interceptions for a touchdown.
I remember this, yeah.
He picked off another one and was running down the sideline to score a touchdown. He spotted PJ on the sideline and pointed at him. So I asked PJ, I was like, is that true? And he's like, it 100% was true. He said there's a picture of it floating around. He's a very confident young man. And he is, when I say athletic, he is incredibly athletic.
Sounds like the kind of personality that they could maybe use over there. If he's got some of that flair to him in the right way. Like, I mean, I don't mean to make comparisons, and it's a completely different sport, but like Royce Lewis comes to mind, just like somebody who's got that, like, who knows he's good, who exudes that confidence, doesn't make you feel bad about yourself in because of it, but just kind of has that it factor.
He 100% has the it factor, and he's a guy that I think you'd follow because he is so good. He is so athletic. He is so confident and, making plays. He will go make up. If you saw the All-Star game.
Yeah, that interception in the end
zone. The diving
zone.
interception was incredible. Yeah. The block punt. that's what he said. He said, my job is to go make plays. I'm going to make a play. I said, does that, confidence ever get you in trouble? He said, yeah, occasionally, but then I'm going to make a, play right after. I mean, he just, he has a temperament that he I think it would filter through teammates. And he's going to be fun to watch because I just watched him in basketball and, he's a seasonal basketball player. He doesn't play AAU and all that. He walks out and jumps and he's, going right at Isaac Osama. And, Isaac played great and he's going to be a great player for the Gophers. But it was fun to see those two guard each other and go at it. And Coy just, at one point, he had scored 16 straight of his team straight points on threes and putbacks and just jumping. He's a fun athlete to watch.
Some great reading in the Sunday paper and maybe some great things coming to the Gophers football program as well. Chip Scoggins, always great to have you on the show. Congratulations again on another fantastic effort and, 2 efforts in this case. And take care. Get a little time off. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks, Mikey. Appreciate it, man.
Great stuff from Chip. And if you didn't complete your homework assignment that I gave you on Thursday, please do go read that story on Chloe Johnson by Chip. He just talked about it a whole bunch right now. And definitely check out the Coy Parrish feature on Sunday as well. A lot of good reading from Chip lately and always. So go check that out.
Royal Credit Union's smart checking accounts offer no monthly fees and no minimum balance. Enjoy financial freedom when you open your Royal Credit Union smart checking account online at rcu.org/go-checking. Insured by NCUA.
Let's finish with the cooler. Like I teased at the start of the show, some interesting developments as we think about the potential free agency of Kirk Cousins. Cousins slated to be a free agent in March when the league year begins. We all know about his Vikings contract. They tried to get something kind of more medium term done before last season. The sides couldn't come together on the terms, right? The length of the contract. The Vikings wanted to give him maybe 2 years guaranteed, which would have been at that point 23 and 24. Cousins wanted an extra year into 25. The Cousins camp wanted that. You can see why both teams had that position, right? Vikings thinking, okay, maybe at some point it's going to be time to move on. They already liked the draft class of 24 quarterbacks. Now they have the number 11 pick. They probably didn't think they'd be picking that high, but they now have, the number 11 overall pick. They're in a spot now where if it was ideal, Cousins would have signed that contract the Vikings wanted a year ago. They'd have one more year of Kirk Cousins, draft their quarterback of the future right now, and then play him going forward. But that didn't happen. They couldn't agree to anything, so the Vikings put on a bunch of void years at the end of his contract and said, okay, we'll come back to the table, but essentially you can become now a free agent after the 23 season. He's having a good year. He's on a hot streak. He's among the league leaders in a lot of these statistical categories. In advanced metrics like total QBR, he's in the top 10. He's having a good year, a very good year, maybe one of his best years in purple, certainly, but then he gets hurt. Vikings are 4-4 at the end of that game against Green Bay. Hurts his Achilles, out for the season. Should be good to go by the start of next year. That's kind of the comeback timeline these days. But it kind of sets this up, right? How are they going to agree on terms if they couldn't last year? What has changed this year? What about this makes you think the Vikings have the team to compete with Kirk Cousins as a quarterback, especially if he's going to eat up a whole bunch of your cap space? I've already talked ad nauseum about how much of a draft deficit they're in over the last couple of years, especially relative to the rest of the division. They don't have a ton of picks this year. They've got 2 top 100 picks, 11 and 42. Everybody else in the division has better draft capital again this year and has used their draft capital in the past 2 years to much greater effect than the Vikings. They are in a talent deficit. Even if you think Kirk Cousins is a good quarterback, which I do, I don't see, in Kwesi's terms, a time horizon on which Kirk Cousins leads this team to anything more than the fringes of playoff contention, and that is not where I want to be if I'm a franchise. I want to hit a little bit more of a reset, a little bit more of a rebuild than what they think they're in right now, and so Kirk Cousins might, in fact, not be here. We don't know how that's going to play out. He's keeping his options open, of course. He sounded the horn in the last home game. He's shirtless, sounding the horn before the Packers game where they get blown out. He's saying all the right things, says, says all the right things about being in Minnesota. So do Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah and Kevin O'Connell. The sides like each other, but this is more about fit, term, length, things like that. Can they come to an agreement? We don't know, and so Kirk Cousins has to keep his options open, as anyone would do. So to that, we started thinking, okay, where could Kirk Cousins go? And one of the natural potential landing places for Kirk Cousins is Atlanta. We had already connected some of the dots. Atlanta needs a quarterback. Their quarterback play was one of the things that held them down last year. They could have been a playoff team last year, but their quarterback play just was not up to snuff. Now, you already threw in that Kirk Cousins has family ties there. He and his wife were married there. His wife has family. Her parents still live in the Atlanta area. So there'd be some kind of seamless kind of personal life transition. The Cousins, of course, have 2 young boys. And so there'd be some grandparents, some seamless family transition. We already knew those 2 kind of external factors. Now you throw this into the mix. Bill Belichick could wind up as Atlanta's head coach. There's a lot of steam about that. He's already interviewed once, reading now that he's expected to do a second interview with the Falcons this weekend. So it sounds like he is maybe getting closer to becoming the Falcons head coach. If Bill Belichick goes to Atlanta, he is not going there to draft a rookie quarterback and do a long, protracted rebuild. He is going there to win soon, to compete now. Not saying he's going to have his Tom Brady, but he's certainly not going to have his Mac Jones. He's not going there to say, okay, maybe we can develop someone. He wants someone who could step in right away and play. Kirk Cousins could do that. I think he likes Kirk Cousins. I think he would like the idea of a Kirk Cousins type quarterback. And in fact, Kirk Cousins was asked about Bill Belichick this week by a reporter from CBS Sports. Here is what he said about the possibility of playing for Bill Belichick, which he was asked about directly. Here's the full Cousins quote. He said, "I'm not going to turn down an opportunity to play with a future Hall of Fame coach, but we'll have to see where March leads. There's just a lot of unknowns right now." Now, that's not like a gotcha. That's not like, oh, wow, Kirk Cousins definitely teaming up with Bill Belichick in Atlanta. But it's an interesting possibility, and the way he answered that question, he could have answered that question in a lot of different ways. Maybe he's caught off guard. Maybe he just has a lot of admiration for Bill Belichick. He gets asked about it, and all of a sudden he's like, well, I'm not going to turn that down. Like, he's one of the greatest coaches of all time, one of the most accomplished coaches of all time. But he also could have just said the second part of that quote, we don't know where March is going to lead. Who knows what's going to happen? But when he said, I wouldn't turn it down, that caught my ear in a way. You just hear things and you're like, man, you could have answered that question in a lot of different ways, and that is the way you chose to answer that question. And why are you giving this answer? Why are you giving this interview in the first place right now? This is how free agency works. He wants to make sure that everybody knows, hey, I'm available. I'm out there. I might consider playing for Bill Belichick, especially if it's in Atlanta, right? He didn't say that, but if Belichick is trending towards Atlanta, this doesn't feel like an accident to me. This feels like it's, hey, I might like to do that. Look me up. Come talk to me. Let's see what happens here between us. See if we can make something happen. So I don't know where this is all going to lead. Neither does Kirk Cousins, but that was interesting to me. Another wrinkle in the, hey, maybe Atlanta is a fit for Kirk Cousins train that some of us might be on. That'll do it for me today. That'll do it for me this week. Hope you guys have a great weekend. Back with Royce on Monday. Tons of great stuff next week. Joe Mauer could find out on Tuesday. We'll find out for sure on Tuesday whether or not he's making the Hall of Fame. A lot of positive momentum in that direction, so a lot of that will be covered next week as well. Until then, I'm Michael Rand. Enjoy your weekend. Back at it again on Monday.